I, oh, okay.
Allan must have joined us.
Well, Alan's there, but he's just not showing us his pretty face.
Yeah. Just like you.
Tweaking his cameras. You only said that because the recording's on.
Happy fingers on the OBS computer. You ever heard the term PEBCAC?
Yes.
Nope.
No.
Problem exists between keyboard and chair.
Exactly.
I sincerely hope you're not talking about me again.
I wouldn't be.
Why in the world would we do that?
How's everyone doing? Gosh, good crowd today.
Good, we're good.
All my best friends are here. Yeah, Susan, good to see you.
Okay.
Jan, welcome. Gary, what's up? South Carolina?
Yes, sir. South Carolina. And boy, is it a nice day out.
Yep, you got our weather. It's horrible down here. Just started raining again.
Oh, that means it'll be raining here soon, huh?
Likewise.
Yeah, it was lovely for about an hour this morning. Remind me, if I grab this, that this is not my water bottle. This is my water bottle. Somebody was asking me the other day to be specific about which alcohol I use. I had to get them to be specific about what they meant I was using it for, but they said for my insects. And this is the stuff I use because it's cheap. Clear Springs grain alcohol. It's not cheap. It's $20 a bottle.
Yeah.
Or 13 or something like that. I just bought a bottle yesterday. This stuff is the same as Everclear, I think, and
Oh boy.
almost pure ethanol. And it's the best, I think, for keeping things intact for long periods. It's less harsh on colors than the isopropyl.
Oh, okay.
So what we're going to do is, this is Pzoom, of course, and we've got a big crowd here today. So that's good, because what I want to try to accomplish today is to get some feedback from you, for one thing, but also we've got a guest coming on, a friend of Bud's, who has kindly, let me see if this is a message. Yes, this is a message from him. Oh dear, it says he has the wrong passcode. Okay, I'll figure that out in just a second. But we have a friend of Bud's joining us who has taken me up on the offer to, well, there he is. There's Josh right now. So I'll talk about what we're going to get into later on when we get there. The reason Josh has been invited was, as you know, I've been talking to all of the groups on YouTube and over here on Patreon, trying to get advice and learn about 3D printing so that we can all benefit from the process of picking out a printer, given the number of us that use them and what a big purchase decision it is. Now, I'm only able to get this printer because of a generous grant from Mr. Jan Nelson, who's in our midst today. And I feel particularly responsible for making a good decision when I'm spending somebody else's money. I mean, I may have just gone with the first thing that was shiny enough if I was making the decision, but not with Jan's money. So a big part of that was to get as much advice from experts as I could. We have a few of our own experts, and I got a lot of great expert advice from people who have and use printers on a daily basis, and that's been great. But as I was getting ready to pull the trigger on the bamboo printer, I got a message from Bud that his friend Josh, who is a a real expert in the field, an engineer, had an opinion that he thought I might want to hear. And the first thing I thought was, well, then I want you to hear it too, because if it comes through me, it's going to get garbled. So Josh is here with us now. He isn't in a place where he can share a picture. He doesn't have the thingamajig set up, but he is on audio. Josh, welcome to the group. There's a bigger crowd here than anticipated. I hope that doesn't bother you.
Not at all. Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Perfect.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me. I was okay with the short notice. Saturday is usually my day down in my lab anyway, so it worked out perfect.
Fantastic. Well, let me just lay out the groundwork for you. There's not much of it. I mean, I looked at all of the printers commercially available, talked to all my friends, and boiled it down to half a dozen or so. Of those, there were two clear leaders in the discussion. One was the Bamboo, the entry level enclosed printer that's fairly new apparently, and the Prusa, which was at the time, it was the i3 third generation that was recommended. Now I understand there's a fourth generation now, or a number 4. So that's where we are. We did a vote that was completely contaminated by the way I asked the questions, and everybody voted for the one I wanted, which was the Bamboo one. So to reset the whole concept a little bit, let's get your input of those two printers, or if those are two viable choices, which one should I pick and why? And if there's a third I should be thinking about, what is it?
Well, that's one loaded question.
Yep.
but if I could take a quick moment, what I'd like to do is, so I've been tinkering with the 3D or additive machining for quite a while. I started back way back before I was even in college, and one of the things in the very beginning, there was the open source community, and if we didn't have that open source community, we really wouldn't be where we are today. So a lot of the stuff that I will give advice on is very biased, just to be completely transparent, towards the open source community, because the more people we have in this field or in this hobby, the more advanced we become. Even if you're just using it and you're giving feedback on the forums and you're giving trouble tickets to whoever is helping you, you're helping advance the technology. And that's just my bias. There's nothing wrong with the the people that are out there making money because they're providing a good product. I have no qualms with that. So my past experience, I had started out building my own. I moved into, for some of the people on here that may know a history of them, I actually fell into the line of Solidoodle printers. Supported them quite a bit until unfortunately they had a CEO that didn't make quite the best decisions, and that in combination with some supply chain issues kind of made that company fold. So actually looking over on my shelf, I've still got a couple of the Solidoodles sitting there. I moved on and I found, I shouldn't say found, I just kind of realigned with Joseph Prusa. Him and his brother have done wonderful work over the years, even before they established their company with what it is today. They were very, very attentive to the open source community, answering questions. If people couldn't experiment or try something else, they would do it and then give the feedback openly. They were very transparent. They just offered a load of information to the community. So when I ventured into the Prusa environment, I found that they use a lot of common, I should say, common core or common designs that not only integrate with their machines, but other machines as well. So that makes the interchangeability easy. So if somebody was in one region where they only had, so metric and imperial. So if there was, you could only get metric style stuff, they had different designs and different 3D files that you could print, which made it very nice. So even if you had a rudimentary printer that wasn't printing quality but could print functional prints, you could use your existing printer or your friend's printer to make components to assemble your own. So essentially, you make what you can, and then your prints get better, and then you make better ones, and then eventually you're able to make high quality prints. So I'm extremely biased towards Prusa. You are correct. They have the MK i3, MKS. I forget how many letters they've shoved into the name at this point, but it essentially is the latest version of the i3. The new one is the i4. There are leaps and bounds between the two, but both of them will give you quality prints. I actually do run a side business. My background is an automation specialist. I'm a controls engineer by trade with a background in software and hardware development. And I use my Prusa, if not daily, definitely weekly, in some of the prototypes for robotic end effectors and stuff like that to help us economically go through R&D. So my background, again, and I'm probably repeating myself, is with the Prusa platform and what they have to offer. Now that I've said that and got the bias out of the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with today's line of 3D printers or additive machining. So you can go with Bamboo, you can go with Prusa, Creatility. Is a very good line. I've got many people that are friends of mine that reach out, and they've got the Creatility line. I've got a friend that likes to do models, so I've seem to be that some people like to go with function, and some people like to go with I call them bric-a-brac, or stuff you put on the shelves that look pretty. So I've got some guys that do that. They build costumes, and they just build just enjoyable art, if you will. Some people actually sand them down and paint them, but in my line of work, I'm much more towards the functional. So I'll use my 3D CAD to design parts and build functional items, whether it be for my business work or even around the house, stuff that I'm wanting to tinker around with and or salvage. I was telling Bud the other day, you'd mentioned Bud. He was asking me about the viability of PETG and whether it, what it's like in an outside environment. And not to get into a whole tangent here, but my pool, I've got equipment for my pool, and my screener or what, I'm not even sure what you call it, the little net that you fish out leaves with.
The insect catcher.
Yes, there we go. Exactly, especially for you guys, absolutely. And if you're wanting, I can definitely bag them up and get them heading your way. So the coupling, there's a collet lock on there that shattered, and instead of going out and buying a whole new one and then having the telescopic tubes and the net that I just bought and replaced go to waste, I end up doing some research, found actually that somebody else had the same issue. And that's another wonderful thing about the open source community is usually you aren't the first to come into a situation where you need something or something similar. So I found something where somebody had one similar. I've downloaded their file. I did have to modify it a little bit, but essentially I was able to put it on this telescopic screen, and it works. And as I was telling Bud, it's been out there for probably going on 6 years, and it gets sunlight all day long, and it hasn't decomposed. So again, that's just something that you can accomplish with functionality. There's many things, and I've been helping Bud. I was actually over at his house for dinner the other night. We were going over Fusion 360, and I was explaining to him the basics on how to design and take measurements of something in our world and incorporate it into 3D CAD so that he can use, I believe he was wanting to make an adapter for a tripod for the 1/4-20 screw. And I showed him how there's many different options. Sometimes if you're not going to use a lot of force, you can put the threads into the print yourself. The Prusa does a phenomenal job of printing screw threads inside of the body that you're building. And that's good for low force applications. There is other avenues you can go where you can make like a pocket, and then you can use like a soldering iron to melt like a brass insert into it, so that you get a little more engagement, force or engagement capability, if you will. So we were going over that, and it ended up working out. The next day, we designed something, and then we got into dinner and ran out a little bit, ran out of time. So he printed the next day and said, "Hey, it works out great." So again, more functionality. So ultimately, I know I've gone on a long tangent here, but to kind of sum it up, you really can't make a bad decision. There's just aspects of the Prusa and the open source, and there's no proprietary components with a Prusa. Not only does Prusa offer it, but there's many other third parties that can offer that. So if there's supply chain issues and you're needing to replace something, it's easy to source.
Does that translate into a more economical long-term investment in a Prusa? If, say, for example, you need to replace motors at some point, would that actually add up to a real savings? Because the Prusa is more expensive, quite a lot more expensive, actually, at the base level.
Economy is something that I focus on. I like to explain to people, because sometimes when I talk, I could come across cheap. I'm not cheap, but I am frugal.
I am.
So well, and that's perfectly fine. I just some people are like, well, I don't necessarily want to go with the cheapest thing, because I want something that'll last and have a longevity. And again, I tend to steer away from anything proprietary. So if I'm going to pick on one to say and I was explaining this to Bud as well. So the Bamboo platform, there are a few proprietary components. Now their designs are open source. You can research any component on there, and they will offer the design files, everything from the hardware to the firmware. So if you need to get a little advanced and tune your firmware, you can do that as well. But again, you have those proprietary components. So you could have the Bamboo, and down the road, there may be a supply chain issue with them, or that, just like I said with Solidoodle, unfortunately, there are times where some of these companies do come into a hard time where, their business model may not have been, the best. I don't really see that with Bamboo. So I will say that I do like their style and what they do. But with the Prusa, they offer their standard extruders, and that's really what I want to hit home on with, because the Bamboo has a proprietary extruder. So with the Prusa, they typically standardize on a very widely known extruder on their initial or base model. But there are files where if you were to go with any other type of extruder, you could replace the original with that one, or with the original extruder. So again, the economy of it, there's some variability with what you can do with the Prusa if you were in a pinch. Now, in an ideal world, you would just, get the replacement extruder that would pop right in there. But, as we've seen over the last couple of years, especially in my line of work, I've seen supply chain issues left and right. But then there's also advanced extruders as well. If you wanted to get into printing like carbon fiber or filament and stuff like that, where you need a little more robust and accurate extruder, you can modify your Prusa to work with that. And not only that, Prusa will also have the firmware to load into your printer that will recognize that extruder. So yes, economy is a big factor in it.
Is there any advantage to buying an older model Prusa as opposed to get a more functionality? I would be using this 100% as a functional device for making stuff that I currently make by hand. Make a lot of parts and pieces for things out of raw materials with hand tools. So this is going to be a functional thing. Do I need all the recent upgrades, for example, to the 4 here? I'm showing.
I'm actually kind of in that same I'm kind of in that same boat right now. I use my i3 again very frequently, and I'm quite honestly just using the base model. It does what I need it to do. There's a couple. I've got mine on a shelf, and I've rerouted the way that the filament goes in by putting the plastic up above, and then it feeds down in. So I'm not necessarily using their their bracket. I've kind of modified it in that way. But as far as the printer itself, it is absolutely just a base printer. There are advantages to going to the i4 or to the newer one, but in all honesty, I don't even think it's necessary for me right now. When you were talking about pricing, I will say that with the introduction of the i4, the price from Prusa has gone down quite a bit on the i3. And also it even goes down more if you order the kit and you want to assemble it yourself, which I actually Bud ordered his kit and I built his with him, and we got it done in nearly a day. So and that was also with visiting and dinner as well.
Right.
But it's not necessary to go full out. In fact, I think it's actually wise not to. My advice would be to get it and then use it. And then if you do need to add something on, I know that Prusa offers an apparatus that will change the filament for you. Like if you want to do different colors or different materials. I've never really come into that. There's ways to design your prints so that if you needed to do that, you could print all the components in one and then switch it over manually and then print it over in the other. So if you're switching colors or materials, you could do it that way.
Yeah, the Mark IV appears to have two different colored filaments, but I guess they're not being used at the same time, right?
Not typically. There is, and forgive me for if I'm not calling this out correctly, but I believe it's called an MM2 package, and that will automatically switch the filaments for you. To me, that's a little extravagant in the form of functionality. Now, if you were doing models or art, that I could see that being a big factor for you. But as far as functionality, I typically buy my plastic in bulk, and it's usually either black or clear. And functionality is functionality. If I need it to be a different color, I can always hit it with some plastic or some spray paint that's specifically for plastics and stuff like that. So.
Right, that's never been an issue, and it won't be an issue for me either. I was just wondering why it had the two spools of. Well, it looks like the 3 also has spools of ribbon. I mean, filament on top of it. So
if you're seeing that, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, if you're seeing that in like like on their website, I would imagine that they're showing that you can put it on either side of that. Because funny enough, there was a question. And actually a very thorough forum a couple of years ago about people saying that that you would need to put 2 filament rolls on that so that it's balanced and your prints weren't being affected. And I don't know who thought that or who got it in their head that was an issue, but it's absolutely not that way.
Yeah,
it's very robust architecture.
It certainly appears to be beautifully built. I mean, I did look very closely at this. Is there any difference in the materials that you can print on this? And what about the enclosure? If I was to run into a need for more exotic materials, would I need to purchase an enclosure separately?
Well, this is actually a perfect time to be joining into this hobby because if you were to ask me that question maybe five or more years ago, I would have said that the enclosure is absolutely necessary. We didn't have the filament technology that we have today. Typically, you were pigeonholed with PLA or ABS, and ABS was more robust. If you take a look around, nearly everything of structural integrity, plastic-wise, is made out of ABS, because it is a very good plastic. A lot of automotive companies use it. But nowadays we have, your PETG, which is a polyethylene with a glycol additive that makes printing a little easier. So the enclosure nowadays would be more so if you're just wanting to, if you're in like a high contaminant area, where, I don't know, some people have it in their garages where there could be a lot of dust. I've even seen some in wood shops. Really, the enclosure does offer a stable temperature environment, which isn't as necessary with the Prusas. I personally don't have an enclosure.
Really?
Mine just sits in open air and it does well. But one of the reasons I talk about contamination is because when you're beginning, the most important thing that you can do is have your temperatures correct and your bed as clean as possible, because adhesion is the big factor in everything. If you don't have a good adhesion on your first layer, and the plastics are sticky, by nature, and they will do a good job. But if you have any type of, I got told, Bud, even the oils on your hand while you're putting the bed back down, or touching the bed, can cause that first layer to fail. Now we call it the first layer, but it may fail an hour into the print, and then you've lost an hour. So bed cleanliness is very important. But I don't have an enclosure. I've had some in the past when I was trying to use the more primitive plastics. But I haven't found it to be necessary with the Prusa. And again, that's one of the main reasons that I talk so highly about it, is because I've had all these issues in the past with other printers, especially in its infancy of the hobby. And I just haven't experienced those with the Prusa. It's just thermally, it's very stable. And real quickly, because I don't want to get into a long-winded explanation on all of this, but when I'm talking about ABS, I do want to make it for a health and safety concern. ABS off gases. So if you're getting into this, I would not waste any money on an ABS plastic filament. There are much better and safer plastics to be utilized, but the ABS can actually off-put at that temperature very dangerous fumes. Some people use carbon filters to filter that off, but that was one thing that we had, that we've studied and we've understood. And in the last 5 years, we've really come to understand that ABS is not good for an enclosed environment. If you're out in your garage and you can open the garage door and maybe put a fan on, you'd be okay. But you just don't want to be doing that in your office, or around your family, or even yourself. Just, you don't want to subject somebody to that environment. So that's kind of my health and safety concern there, is just, as long as everybody understands that there are certain plastics that off gas. But if you stick with your PLA, your TPU, your PETG, PETG is actually a good one. You'll probably hear me reference that quite a bit, because it structurally is very comparable to ABS. So I personally have gone from ABS to PETG for anything that I need of very strong structurally.
Is it typical to just keep spools of a different filament on hand and then just switch them out if you need something different? Can you do that in the middle of a spool?
Yes, absolutely. You can, and there may take it may take you a little bit of time to kind of get used to how much you actually have on the spool. There's some times where when I'm starting up a print, it'll tell me how many meters of the filament that's estimated to be used. And I'll not do a very good job of guessing, but since then I've done a little bit of math and I can actually count the windings on there and say, okay, well, I've got enough to go, especially if I stop a spool in the middle and I'm wanting to pick it up later. But as far as switching them in and out, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I buy mine in bulk and I just keep it in a Rubbermaid makes a very good container that has a gasket on the top, and you want to keep it dry. You'll throw some desiccant in there. Some people actually get those little 12-volt dehumidifiers like you put in a gun safe or in a toolbox or something like that.
Yeah, I've got.
But you want to keep it dry. Yeah, you definitely want to keep it dry, because if you don't, you'll get some popping, and that's the moisture in there boiling through the extruder. So that's one thing you just want to make sure you're doing, is keeping it in a dry environment.
I'm down on the Gulf Coast, so everything down here gets wet after a while. Two other quick questions, and I'm mindful of your time at this point. You get shared so much with us. The purchase price of the kit, the i3 Mark III's kit, is I saw it a minute ago. It was like $649, which is definitely less than the Mark IV. Are there any other hidden costs that starting up would entail are not immediately apparent. Is there anything else you need to buy?
Other than I'm going to say initially, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Generally, when you buy a Prusa kit, you get everything in there that you need to print your first, probably 30 prints.
Okay.
They send you with plastic. They send you with the tools to assemble it. They have some extremely good instructions. And if the instructions aren't clear, there's 100 different tutorials on YouTube to venture out and get advice. Outside of what's in that kit that you may want, and I've advised Bud on the same thing, is I swing over to my local hardware store, even a Harbor Freight, and grab a pack of brass brushes just to be able to clean my nozzle between prints. Maybe some alcohol, isopropyl with some facial pads to just kind of wipe and keep your bed oil free and contaminant free. So outside of that kit, you're probably only looking about another $20, in expenses for just getting you stuff that's going to last you a long time. Your brass brushes are going to last a long time, especially, a lot of them come in 3-packs. Isopropyl, a bottle of that is very inexpensive and it's going to last you quite a bit of time, especially if you're just cleaning, prior to a print.
Yeah. Not in
But
this
I don't,
house.
well, I'm sorry.
Alcohol doesn't last long in this house.
Well,
I don't even drink it.
I find that now that I have it for my printer, I have a cabinet where I kind of keep some of that stuff in there, for maintenance and whatnot. Yes, I find other uses for it as well.
Is putting it together good fun? I mean, is it an enjoyable build, or is it frustrating? I mean, it's the time that I'm more concerned about than whether or not I'm capable of it. It's just a full day's work, you say?
Yes, yeah, it does. It will take a good, I would say if you dedicated a weekend, that would be very comfortable. Now, it would all depend on, personality and patience and stuff like that. It is not a difficult build in the least. But I also have a background of, I've built robotic cells my entire life. Even as a young kid, my father and my uncle were controls engineers as well as electricians. So I have a very strong background in that. But I've got a friend that lives in the Carolinas, and he bought one at the very beginning of COVID, the COVID lockdown, because he had the time, and he put it together with no problem. There is that anxiety or that anticipation of getting a new toy and wanting to get it up and going as fast as possible. But if you're in this hobby for functionality, especially with your prints, it's actually a good experience to put it together, because you see, as you're building it, you can see and understand why they did the things that they did in the ways that they did, so that when you're designing your components, it'll kind of give you some insight on how to tackle it with the additive machining techniques.
Yeah, I thought that would be one of the big advantages to it. Is there anything that anybody else has that they'd like to ask Josh? Anybody who has a printer or is thinking about getting one? Now would be a great time. You're never going to have a better opportunity.
Yeah, I have a question. And I was wondering about the product, the plastic. Does that tend to be solid or porous? Is there porosity in the development of whatever you're trying to print out? Because I'm looking for the rigidity of the item, the object that I might be printing out.
As far as rigidity, I don't think there's an issue. I mean, it would also depend on your design. So if you needed to implement like a gusset or some type of support, just build that into your design. But there's very many mechanical objects, and again, if you guys ever wanted me to join back in, I could bring some of the things that I've designed and have around my house and show you how well they've faced over time and whatnot. I unfortunately, and I know Alan mentioned it in the beginning, I'm in the middle of a vision detection system, so my webcam is occupied on something else. So I do apologize. But as far as rigidity, especially if you get into like the PTG, I've never had any issues.
But
I'm sorry. Oh.
Oh dear.
So I haven't come across that. Now, as far as porosity, you know, the Prusas do phenomenal about sealing up the walls. Now you're inside, it's almost like a human bone where you can have an infill of so you're not, it's not one solid piece of plastic. You can actually change the infill so that the inside is not necessarily hollow, but you know, there's different internal structures and internal support patterns that you can utilize that make your parts stronger. You can also increase that infill or decrease that infill. So if you have a product that's not going to be under any type of mechanical load, you could go at a lower infill and it'll still be functionally viable. Or you can go with a heavier infill and it'll be, you know, you can apply different stresses to it and it should hold up.
And that saves you on filament as well, presumably.
Absolutely, yes. That is a huge savings on filament. It can make a significant difference depending on your infill selection.
You referred to two different software packages that are required. One is a CAD program like Fusion, and is there a second interface with the printer itself that you need to learn?
So typically, I use Fusion 360. There are many other 3D modeling softwares. I particularly use Fusion 360 because I'm offered a free license. There's a hobbyist license. So you can use the free software for that. To me, it was easier to utilize that software because I also do PCB design, and there's an element in there that allows me to design my circuit board inside of what I'm, you know, the 3D environment of the object that I'm building. So that's my preference. There is a slight learning curve. Now, like I was talking with Bud over the last dinner I had at his house, and we kind of went over the first steps into getting into Fusion 360. There are a couple areas where the learning curve could be a little steep, but once you're past those, it just kind of cascades into being very easy. But there's also, you know, Google has Google SketchUp. There's Tinkercad. There's a quite a bit of different other options, and all of them are supported on YouTube. There's many people out there that can guide you through the basics and get you where you need to be. So essentially, you will need a 3D environment if you're going to go into this hobby for, or a 3D CAD environment if you're going to go into this hobby for functionality. Now, the other item on that would be a program called Slicer. More specifically, Prusa Slicer is the one that I use. It is designed to work married in perfectly with the Prusa platform. It's actually released by the Prusa Foundation. And funny enough, Bud actually pioneered moving directly from Fusion into Prusa 360 when we were exporting the object he was wanting to print. And I'd never done that before. We saw the option. He said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, I think that puts it right into the other software." And we actually pioneered it that night. It worked beautifully. So what Slicer does is it actually takes the object. It takes your STL file, or your there's a new format out there. I think it's M3 something. Unfortunately, I can't remember it off the top of my head. But essentially, it is a it's an object file, and you'll put it into Slicer, and then what Slicer does is just that. It slices it up into different layers. It'll add supports if you have overhanging. Typically with the Prusa, I've done very good with overhangs. It's just if you get like a 90-degree overhang, it'll build supports off the bed up to that location, and then once your part comes off of the bed, then you just break those pieces off. So you'll need the Slicer to essentially write what we call G code, which is just coordinates for the machine to move to and know how much distance to move and how much plastic to extrude as you're going, you know, through your print. So there are two software suites that you'll need, either any of the many out there 3D environments as well as a slicer. And there's other slicers out there as well, but with the Prusa platform, Prusa slicer works the best.
I told Allan to get info on 3D printers, and he's on the meeting.
Oh, I didn't know Bud was in here. Hey, Bud.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm sorry. I should have introduced you, but we've got about 30 people here today, which is fantastic. Does the slicer come with the printer?
Yes, slicer is not only does it not only come with the printer, but they constantly update it. So that's another thing that I'm pretty passionate about is the software development that Prusa offers. They have come leaps and bounds with pushing their technology to the limit. I could spend a whole nother meeting on what they've advanced and how they've advanced it. But the important thing is that there is nearly a release, if not once a month, at least twice a month, on updates to that software to help enhance your prints. They even go so far as to offer a way to finish your prints so they actually look. They call it iron, and it takes a top layer and actually passes the extruder over it and makes it more pretty, if you will.
Yeah.
So they do functionality, side of the hobby. It doesn't really matter, but yes, their software, and it's completely free and open source. And not only can you use it with the Prusa, but you can also use it with other 3D printers as well. You just have to put your information in, like your bed size and your Z height and stuff like that. But yes, the Prusa slicer does come free. If it doesn't come with a USB an SD card with your Prusa kit, it will definitely be available on their website at all times. And that's another thing, when you do order your kit, it comes with an SD card in there as well. So, and it all comes pre-programmed with, I think, and Bud might be able to specify on it, but I think there was at least 12 different prints that you can just, once you're done building it, you fire it up, it'll go through a self-test. It's all self-calibrating. It may ask you to adjust a couple things, but that's just a matter of turning a screw. And then you can immediately go into a print. You don't have to design anything. You don't have to slice it. You can just start printing to see how it works.
Fantastic. I noticed on the documentation for the i3 that it mentions that Wi-Fi connectivity and Ethernet connectivity are both optional via a Raspberry Pi. Do you recommend adding Wi-Fi and an Ethernet connection?
So I do know that Ethernet is so natively, so from just the 3D printer itself, the i4 offers the Ethernet and the Wi-Fi natively. With the i3, it is through a Raspberry Pi, and that is typically with a software called Octoprint. I have used Octoprint in the past. It is not necessary. You can simply load your files on the SD card on the base, Prusa itself, pop it in there. A little screen will pop up and say, hey, which file do you want to go through? You use a little dial, select which file you want to print, and you print it. With the Octoprint, however, if you do want to wander away and live life while your prints are printing, you can monitor from your phone the temperatures, the progress, the progress bar of your print nearing the finish. And then there's also an implementation of a webcam, or even if you want to get deeper into the Raspberry Pi actually has a native camera you can mount on it. And some people do time lapse stuff, but with you guys having the professional photography equipment, I'm sure that you would run circles around what a webcam can do on your time lapse. So the Raspberry Pi is beneficial, but not necessary at all.
Okay, and that's not a particularly. I didn't know if you could even get them anymore. I know that last year they were hard to find. I use Arduinos. I don't suppose they have an option for running this.
Well, it's funny you say that, because there is a for the i3, there is an option natively on the circuit board for an ESP8266, which is available on the Arduino IDE, because when it comes to Arduino and Raspberry Pi, I use them. I'm very well versed with them. And just to hit on the Raspberry Pi, because I actually, because I'm a commercial operation, they give me an update. We're supposed to have a much better supply of the Raspberry Pis coming to the end of Q2 into Q3 this year.
Oh, cool.
They've been working very. I know all too well the scalper prices for the the Raspberry Pis in the last couple of years, and it's been quite, without, for lack of better words, very ridiculous.
Yeah, I was just learning Raspberry when they became unavailable. So I've done everything I've learned has been on Arduinos.
Yes, yep.
But
as far as the ESP8266 plugging into the board, there is some firmware that you can put on there. But again, I personally just load my stuff up on my SD card and put it in there, because the time you can do the same thing to send it. If you had a print farm where you had many different printers, I could see the viability in the Wi-Fi edition with the 8266. But if you're just using a single printer and you're just loading your files on there, you're talking about a very, very small percentage of the time that you're just moving the SD card around. So to me, it was never a necessity to keep me moving on what I was doing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would be something I'd mess with either. This has just really been incredible. I'm so glad that Bud suggested I call you, and I didn't tell folks at the beginning, but I gave you almost half an hour's notice on this, I think, which is unusually generous of me.
No, that's perfectly fine. Again, I can't stress enough that the more people in this hobby and the more people contributing, it just pushes us all further in this. And the things that I've accomplished with mine, and the things that I've seen over the last couple of years of people that I've gotten into into the hobby. My friends in the Carolina, Bud himself, he was showing me the prints that he's designing. And not only does it push us further in the additive machining, but there's other, if everybody's looking at a problem and everybody's offering a solution and they're able to try it out themselves, we're going to see a lot more solutions for other things out there.
Oh, yeah.
Just beyond the additive machining. So I'm very passionate about it. I greatly appreciate your guys' time and inviting me in here, because these kind of things are what I thoroughly enjoy.
Well, I'll speak for everybody right now based on the expressions on faces. I would very much like to have you come back and show us some examples of your work at some point, maybe after I've broken the kit that I'm going to be building.
That's fine. And actually, I'm right up in, I think Bud said that, and you also mentioned that you're down on the Gulf Coast. I'm just up in Georgia.
Right.
Up in the Northwest here, I'm right on the border between Atlanta and Birmingham, just on the Georgia side. So,
yeah, that's my neck of the woods. Birmingham's my home ground.
So getting down there in my job, my day job, I should say, I'm down in the Gulf area a lot for customers. So if you do get your kit and you get into a pickle, let me know and I'll find a reason to venture over to that area. And maybe we could do a live stream on how to fix the break.
It'll be a great part 2 for the 27-hour live event that will be building
it. And I will say, and I think Bud can contest, we were putting it together, but as you can probably tell from the where we added the 50-minute mark here, I can get a little long-winded and passionate about things. So I'm certain that during Bud's build, I was probably over analyzing and explaining stuff, but more importantly, I was showing them how we're going to build it and we're going to build it right. So,
well, that means I've got Bud as a resource too. So I probably will video this thing, because I think it would be interesting.
Cool. Absolutely. I would love to see it.
Great. Well, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate it, as I'm sure everybody does. And I'll be in touch, and we'll have a round 2. So thank you so much for coming.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much. You guys take care.
Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you, Bud, for making that possible. I really appreciate it. That was very, very educational and fascinating. That would have been interesting even if I wasn't interested in 3D printing. Which sounds like an almost bottomless rabbit hole to me. Does anybody else get that impression that this is one of those exciting things? Graham, plug in. I'm eager to hear what you think about what you just heard.
Well, I can't follow Josh, can I? I mean, well, enthusiastic experience, no way I can comment on that. But you know, I have bought a printer. It's sitting there behind me. You can see it. And I didn't buy a Prusa. I decided not to, and I'm glad I didn't. Hard for me to defend the whole discussion tonight. I fully understand, because you know, I come from the days where I built my first computer. You know, I was running out on audio tapes and writing C Basic and all this stuff, you know, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was a Netscape Navigator person in the early days of, you know, the internet, you know, open source and all that sort of thing. So, you know, what Josh said, I fully understand. I didn't. I looked at the Prusa and I decided not to get it. I bought the Bamboo. I'm 3 weeks into it, so you know what I say is rubbish, really. But you know, I'm a new user. So it's been faultless. It's been fantastic. It's got all the things that basically that Josh was saying. Really, it's, you know, it's got the camera. It's got the thing on the top that if it runs out of filament, it pulls the next one in. It doesn't have to stop. I can watch it online. All the stuff. I built this. This is my test. I'm bearing in mind 3 weeks in. So I started learning Fusion 360. That's my nut and bolt.
Oh, wow.
I then built this gearbox, 64:1 ratio, little gearbox as a homework exercise. If you can see that.
That's impressive.
I'm not showing off. I'm just saying.
No.
And in the last couple of days, I've made this thing, which is probably hard to see. I've got a rather expensive e-bike called Rita Muller, and the covers for the charging port kept falling off. They were made of a foldable material, and they just kept breaking. And so I've designed and made this. Now, in fact, I'm going to start selling it, I think, because with a magnet closure, I don't know if you can see that. It's
Yeah. I was going to say that's not big enough for a toilet seat, though.
It does look a bit like a toilet seat. And yeah, it was a long time. But
had you any experience in 3D modeling prior to this, or did you?
Not since 3 weeks ago. Well, in fact, 3 weeks today. So I've done the whole thing. I did that in Tinkercad mostly. This in Fusion 360.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And the same with the nuts and bolts and God knows what else I've been playing with. So all I can say is that if I was going to go and buy a computer today, I wouldn't buy one that I built myself, and I wouldn't buy an open source one. I go and buy one that works. And from a very 3 week old, but nevertheless fairly into it, all I'd say is that I feel we're at the same stage where it's good fun. If you want 3D printing as a hobby, personally, I'd say then the Prusa is definitely the thing to go. If you want to build it, fiddle with it, tweak it. If you want something that works, that works. I can't say any more than that.
Yeah, and this is exactly the two horns of this dilemma that I've been hung on since this discussion started. Is I hear you reason through this purchase decision the way I would like to be able to, and made a very logical decision. So did Bud. And I think it's going to come down to they're both great printers. It's whether or not one thing is the prices are a good bit different. Your Bamboo's not the base model.
No, it's not.
What is it? So I can put a picture of it up. This
is the Bamboo X1 Carbon, and I've got it with the what they call it, the AMS. This is a 4-roll feeder on the top. So I can send the print wirelessly to the computer, and I can pick what filaments I'm going to use from the computer. So if I've got 3 different colors and something else, I can pick it from the computer and just send it in seconds. But I mean that's.
Is that a convenience or
yes,
functionally?
It's fantastic. Though. I've been prototyping today. That thing I just showed you. There's a whole box full of bits there where I've amended it and changed it and things like that. And the advantage is I can make an amendment and send it to the printer. Within sort of like 20 seconds, it's done.
Oh wow!
So you don't have to get SD cards or any of that stuff anyway. Well, not on this one anyway. So I modify it, build it, grab it, measure it up, find out the stupid mistakes I've made, like we all do, and you know, and amend.
What about the enclosure issue? Do you think?
Mine's got an enclosure. It means that I can print. Although I think Josh was saying that it's all changing, but I printed ABS today. Absolutely the same as printing PLA, no problem. In fact, I'm getting some ASA in for the ultraviolet resistance for that thing I just showed you. That thing is going to be, if it's sat outside, PLA is degrades in ultraviolet. So I'm going to change that to SA, and I expect that to be put it in the printer and it'll come out perfect straight away. It's been faultless, fantastic.
Last question: did you find any hidden costs that you weren't prepared for after you made the big purchase?
No, and just to say what to go on from what Josh was saying, that it might not be open source, but the Chinese are already selling modified print heads and adapters and things like that. It's all, you know, it's new in, but everyone's, you know, you start getting bits for it now, custom bits. It's much the same really, but the advantage is you haven't got, you know, it self levels as well. So, you know, when I print it does all the leveling. I haven't got to touch it at all. I just literally stick it in there and pull it out. Fantastic.
Oh, dearie me.
3 weeks in, so.
Yeah, well, but I would expect with a problematic printer or something that was super complicated, that 3 weeks in you wouldn't even know whether or not you liked it. That's I mean, it's clear that it's working. It sounds a lot like an Apple type of product, which may or may not be a good thing, but works out of the box. Well, thanks very much, Graham. I appreciate it. I knew that you'd have some light to shed on this. Let me ask Jan. Jan, what do you think of this discussion so far? Your opinion's rather important here.
My opinion is not important at all. You're the one making the decision. I'm just helping you along on that one. To me, I was listening to everything that Josh said. I was listening to everything that Graham said too. I personally, if I were to move forward, probably would go Prusa, but that's just my opinion and my looking at what I've seen online and all that. And that's just it. That's my opinion. Okay. But again, this is your machine that you're talking about.
Absolutely. But I did not expect to hit a jackpot on the discussion as far as getting Josh to come talk to us. But this very probably has changed the balance, I think, a little bit. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Susan, I noticed you left a comment while we were talking about the relative speed of the two models of the Prusa. Are you a 3D printer as well?
No, but I've read a book on it and I've watched on it, and so. But what I was getting at is that the new Prusa model is faster than the 4 is faster than 3. But that's not, I'm not speaking from direct knowledge.
Got it. Well, the discussion has come up. Bud and I have talked about it, and speed is relatively unimportant. I mean, really, it's. I mean, to me, not in the big picture. I'm sure to some people it's critical, but you know, I'll be printing probably small parts periodically, and I'll just plan my schedule around waiting. So that's not as important as I thought maybe it would be.
Okay.
Well, that's wonderful. Again, Bud, thanks for setting that up. It really segues well into what I was going to talk about first. So I'm going to move on unless anybody else has anything else they want to bring up on the printer issue.
I would, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, absolutely.
Okay, knowing you as well as I know you from the last few months, you're a tinkerer of all sorts. And if you were looking to get something that you could tinker with, the one that you want to get is one that you can tinker with.
Yeah.
Bamboo, you're not going to tinker with that because it's proprietary, 99%. And so therefore you wouldn't be able to say, oh, I could do this. Oh, wait a minute, I can't do it because I have to contact the manufacturer to
Yeah.
see if I.
That's a good point. You know, I've thought about this. I've thought about switching away from Apple to PC for that very reason. Because you know you just don't open up an Apple and poke around in there. So it would be much the same, I think, with a proprietary printer, and that's a good point. So I'm going to have to resist the urge to take this thing apart to see how it works, which is an argument for building it myself. Then I won't need to.
You and I
thanks.
both be in a bad boat for that one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks very much, Gary. I appreciate it. Okay, well, I think we've come full circle on that, and let's turn back to Pzoom. But before we do that, did anybody get the email I sent out today, the notice about the meeting reminder that had some photographs at the end of it? Well, I can't tell you any more about those photographs because I have not yet. Would you like me to check, actually? Maybe I have. Let me just see if I've heard back from a certain person in a certain country where it's already nighttime. I just need to make sure that I have permission for this discussion. I didn't at the beginning of the meeting, right as I came on board. Oh man, it is storming out here badly. No, I still haven't heard back from them. So I can only be very, very circumspect in my comments, but I have been working for 48 hours over there in the corner, taking pictures and testing a certain piece of equipment that came into my possession yesterday. And after a couple of days of using it, I'm beginning to think that this may actually be a bit of a game changer, and I use that term very, very carefully, because this is something that doesn't exist right now. Yeah, if it were real, then it could in the very near future exist for people who are interested in pushing some envelopes and maybe getting into some areas of macro photography that they had thought unavailable to them. Beyond that, I can't say. Talking about tinkering, I have to go make a piece so that I can finish this this first round of testing, because there was a piece that didn't come with it that is necessary. So that's going to add even more information. But those photographs were taken with, if it existed, they would have been taken with that piece of equipment. So just saying, there may be some exciting stuff on the way. Yeah. This is
it expensive? Is it expensive, Alan?
It has to be. I have no. Excuse me. There's something in the way of my foot. I need to just move it out of the way. There we go. There, that's better. Yeah. So it pretty much. What was the question? Expensive? Yeah, it pretty much has to be. If it existed, it would be. But I have no idea what.
Was it in that box that you just moved?
Oh gosh, it might have been. It might have been.
Right. Say no more.
Yeah. So anyway, there you go. I am just bursting. It's like when you buy somebody a Christmas present when you're 6 and you can't tell them for 2 months what it is. Yeah, it's whether or not it's going to be the panacea that I'm sure it'll be advertised that, it's definitely doing things that I didn't expect. So bear with me. You will be the first to hear about it, I promise. I had a chat this morning with my new girlfriend, ChatGPT, because I was drawing a blank I have been wanting to make some changes to this environment, to the I love what we do in the Pzoom meetings, but I feel like it's an opportunity, and I'm picking, of course, the one day when we have 30 people show up, but it's an opportunity that I think may be not being taken full advantage of. And I want to make it more this year. I want to make it more accessible and interesting and useful to more people, so that the people that are supporting me can get the advantages from it. I have no desire to change any of the stuff. I love the fact that we do a lot of tech talk. We talk about equipment and gear. But what I wanted to do was, I made a list of a dozen ideas that I had of things that may, we have 4 hours a month. I'm willing to change that up or down, or break it up, or do it all at once. Whatever the group wants to do, I'm good with. But I wrote down a list of all the things that we have tried, things that we have done, things that never got any traction, and things that I haven't done but I'm thinking about doing. And then I asked ChatGPT, which I actually use on a daily basis to help with content and getting ideas. I use it to get ideas. And I asked, I'll actually read what I asked, because the question is important. They don't call them questions. The prompt was important. So that you can see how aligned we are. And then I will share with you the things that surprised me, and then open it up to you guys. If I suddenly disappear, it might be that I've actually disappeared. This weather is getting a bit scary out here. There's it's black and windy. Okay, so I teach macro photography to adults online using video and live events. I have a core group of supporters who provide financial support, and I give them a 2-hour gathering every 2 weeks on a Saturday. It's conducted via video conference so that all the members are able to have real-time input. I discuss current events within macro photography, as well as giving demonstrations of new equipment or techniques and discussing other topics of interest. I encourage the members to bring their own topic to discuss or pictures to share. The group is approximately 120 in number, but we usually have about 10 members show up for the Pzoom meetings. Like I say, wouldn't have been accurate today. Please provide me with 10 suggestions for content or activities.
Sorry this happened.
That would, have you lost me? No, still see me? Okay, just had a massive boom of thunder. Please give me 10 suggestions for contact or activities that would interest such a group and possibly drive up the number of attendees. Be as specific as possible and assume that there are no constraints in terms of equipment or technology. Try to make each idea both educational and enjoyable for the attendees. That was my prompt. Came back, guest speakers. Invite a different expert to speak on a specific topic at meetings. Different photography styles, techniques, or gear recommendations. Well, we have done and continue to do that. Hands-on workshops. Host a virtual interactive workshop where members can practice new techniques or experiment with different types of equipment. I would give feedback and advice on your technique. Technically challenging, sounds like an awful lot of fun. Not sure how you could do it in 2 hours, but it's an interesting thought. Group critiques. Members submit your work on a scheduled basis or whenever you want to, and I don't critique it, the group critiques it. We go through the pictures and have an open discussion looking at one another's work, which I think it's the one thing I regret about our experience so far, is that we don't do that more often. I think peer critique is super important in getting better. Another one to think about. Photography challenges. Set up a weekly or monthly photography challenge with specific themes or topics. Members submit their best photos. I provide feedback, maybe choose a winner each week. We already do this, and we're doing it well, I think. Our competition is popular and well attended. So I think I would count that as part of the same thing. By the way, if anybody has wants to interrupt one of these, jump in. This is a discussion, not a lecture.
Okay, Alan, I'd like to make a mention of how to go about that, and so that all the members would have some idea of what is coming up. And by the members submitting what they would like to discuss and show, because if there's a lot of members that want to show something or talk about something, obviously there's not going to be enough time. So in order to keep it fair to everybody, you have a date in which the member has to fill out a form and submit to you, so you know the people who wish to display or talk about an issue, in order to give them time to do that.
I'm super conscious of everybody's time, and I don't waste time wherever possible. And I'm conscious of the fact that we have limitations, but the secret weapon that I have is, if we ever run out of time for anything, I'm going to add more time, and we're going to add another session. This is what happened with the live stream. Within a month of starting a live stream, I realized we need more time. We need 2 of these a week, and I added another one. If I had to go to weekly Pzooms to cover all of the interest that we have and the photographs to look at, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I would love to do. This is what, excuse me. This is what I love to do. And I would be doing this with individuals if I wasn't doing it with this group on Saturdays. So that's really not as big an issue as it sounds like. When you have pictures that you want me to see, you don't even have to send them. Just come to the Pzoom, and at the beginning of the meeting, leave a note, say, I've got 3 pictures I want the group to look at, and we will do that. I come with an agenda that I follow if there is silence. If there is stuff you want to talk about, that's what we talk about. And if we run out of time, we'll add more. We've had some meetings that have gone on for way longer than 2 hours. So I hear your concern, but I think it's less of a real practical concern. The biggest, the problem I want to have is too much stuff to talk about, not enough time. Q&A sessions. Well, that is largely, this is recommendation number 5. That's basically how this started, was as a Q&A, and that is always priority number 1. If you show up with a question, or you ask me a question in the messaging app over on Patreon, everything else stops to answer your questions. At heart, this is a Q&A. Close on its heels would be photographs. If you have photographs to show, that's the next thing we look at. Field trips is number 6. Organize virtual field trips to various locations that are great for macro photography. You can provide tips and guidance on how to take the best shots in each location. Now, I read this and I thought, well, that sounds ridiculous, but it actually sounds fascinating and fun if it were done right. And I would that would take some work. I'm going to have to ask chat later on to flesh that out for me. But that could be a lot of fun, maybe every once in a while, to do a virtual field trip to discuss the insects and techniques for shooting in different environments, swamps. We've got plenty of them. And, I could even have footage and examples to show. So there's another thought. Photo editing workshops. Well, there's a good idea that Bud and I should have had at some point in the past. Yeah, done that. Teach members how to edit their macro photographs using different software or apps. This could include basic editing techniques such as color correction, cropping, and resizing. We're well ahead of them on that. Macro photography contests. I'm not even going to read it. We're doing- Was that extraneous? Here's a good one that never occurred to me. A macro photography book club. Maybe a half-hour segment every month or a couple of months where when somebody's read a good macro photography book, summarize it for us, or we all read it and discuss it. I mean, I love book clubs, but I'm a big reader. And yeah, there are lots of good macro photography books that have been out for donkey's years and some that are coming out new every day. So there's a thought, a book club or a book club segment. And then another one that was quite novel and I thought very interesting, a macro photography tips and tricks, but not my tips and tricks, yours, where everybody would bring to the meeting a tip or a trick that they would share, explain, give examples, show some pictures. If it's equipment, show the thing off, whatever. But everybody would have a chance to share with everybody else your top tricks. I think that would be very interesting. I mean, I know because I've talked to all of you and you all have good ideas and you all do things a bit differently. There are so many ways that we can improve. So that one appeals to me. It could include topics like lighting, composition, camera settings, equipment, the rig, of course, that you're using. And I could even create a series of short, informative videos to share with members. Well, I do that anyway, but yeah, that could go along with it. So there's a thought. I think these are good thoughts. I'll put them, what I'll do is I'll put these in a post today over on Patreon, just a short post, and just open it up for you to leave a comment. Say, number 2, number 4, I like, the rest rubbish. Don't bother with it. I never let one set of recommendations or suggestions from ChatGPT go unchallenged. So I came back and demanded 8 more. Yeah. I went back and said, these are fine, but I've done most of them. And I want some more unique ideas. Give me 8 more. Here they are. A photo critique challenge. Instead of a simple photo critique, create a photo critique challenge where members are required to shoot specific subjects in macro, and they must submit a set of photos every week for review. This could include a leaderboard where members get points for submitting the best pictures. This sounds like a terrible idea, but you never know. A little competition may be good, but yeah, it sounds stressful and we'd end up having fisticuffs, I'm sure. Photo editing challenge. Create a challenge where members are given the same set of photos and they must edit them creatively to achieve a special effect. This could include using different software, apps, or filters to create. This is good. This is an idea Bud came to me with 3 years ago and said, we should see what other people are doing with their photo editing and get a chance, really look at it in depth. And I think that's brilliant. So that I would be willing and ready to do any of these that appeals to enough people. Interactive macro photography games. Create interactive games or quizzes related to macro that members can play together. This could include trivia, word puzzles, or other interactive games. At first, I dismissed that as nonsense. We're serious macro photographers. That sounds like it could be seriously good fun if it was done right. It really does, but it would need to be done very carefully. But definitely a good thought. Number 4, DIY macro photography equipment. Now, does this play into what we've been talking about all day or what? This is where I teach you the stuff that I do. Bud shows you how to make your own lens hoods. We all contribute. We're all DIYers, I think, at heart. Those of us that don't do it still seem to be interested in it, but DIY is a big thing in macro, and maybe having a carved out piece of time when we could show off our tricks or show how to make stuff, that would be worth it. And it could light boxes, diffusers, reflectors. We already do this on a one-on-one basis. Not a day goes by that I don't compare notes and plans of some piece of equipment with somebody out in the community. It's fantastic fun, and I would love to see us doing that more as a group. Here's another completely novel thing that I would never have thought of. Macro photography history. Explore the history of macro photography and its evolution over time. This could include studying the works of famous macro photographers or learning about the technological advancements that made macro photography possible. I'm not a big history buff. I have the attitude that, well, that was then. We've got stuff to take care of now. And I've never been very good at history because you had to memorize things. That actually sounds interesting. It probably wouldn't be more than a little 10-minute segment every now and again where we could discuss a particularly interesting thing that somebody had turned up, but it's worth thinking about. Number 6, just 3 more. Macro photography ethics. Who knew that such a thing existed? Ethics, that is. Discuss ethical issues related to macro photography, the use of animals, insects, other living creatures, discussing ways to respect and protect the subjects you photograph. Yeah, not sure I would be very good at that, but it's an idea. We've been doing this with AI. I mean, I think our discussion of AI around photography has largely been a discussion of ethics, if not attitudes at least. 2 more, macro photography in different cultures. Explore how macro photography is practiced in different cultures around the world. This sounds like something ChatGPT was scraping around the barrel for. Because I think we all use cameras. This could include studying the works of macro photographers from different regions, fair enough, or learning about the role of macro photography in different cultural traditions. Well, it's 0 in all cultural traditions, so we'll cross that one off the list. We finished it. Last one, and I like this one. Macro photography community service. Encourage members to find ways to use their macro skills to give back to their community. This could include volunteering to take photos for local charities, organizing a macro photography exhibition to raise awareness for a cause. Well, it's not really a group function, but certainly this group would support that and help anybody who was doing such a project. I've done a lot of this, but I haven't done any of it in my own community. Last year, I made a series of posters for a kids microscope club out in California, which was a great cause, and I really thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And that would be fun to do with the group, to talk about and plan and get ideas for. So that's just scraping the surface, but I think that there are 10 or so really good ideas in here, things that I think could make this a more enjoyable event for everybody who wants to attend. Now I want to hear your thoughts on anything I've suggested or stuff I may have missed or anything at all. What do you think? Ingolf, you smiled twice. You must have thought something. Or it could have been gas. What do you think? Any ideas?
Alan, this is Bud. I would really like to see more insect stuff. You know, if you were doing a demonstration where people could ask you about your technique, that would be awesome.
What technique of what? Prepping insects, say?
Yeah, from you get one out of your jar and you put it in alcohol. I'd love to see you wash it and kind of get it ready to go and see if other people have different ways of doing the same thing. It'd be a great discussion because I think most of us found you because of insects, and I know there's a whole world of macro out there, but that currently is certainly my focus, and I don't know whether everybody else feels the same.
Well, the beauty is everybody else won't feel the same, but that's it. That's why this is such a good idea. We talk about this, then I'm getting ready to do an on-site with somebody who is in growing a certain herb that's very popular in this country. And photographing it is apparently a whole thing that I didn't know about. And they need some help in plant dissection. And I'm going to go out and do a live thing with them. That's exactly the same kind of thing. There's so many areas that we can learn together. I can do an insect clean, prep, and position discussion with the microscope right now because I have it all set up. I've been building the studio so that when the question comes up, hey, I have these nice insects, but their legs are all curled up. How do I get them straightened out for a photograph? Well, we can answer the question right now, and that's definitely the way I want to move this towards being able to just. I don't even know if my microscope is plugged in. Might be.
Alan, could I make a
yes? Yes. While I'm setting this up, go ahead.
From what you were saying before, I mean, there's all these people here, some of which haven't spoken tonight at all of which do macro photography, all of which will have different interests and different things. I'd love to find out really what everyone does, because I'll learn from that. And there might be the best practice, but everyone here does something, and I'd really like to know what that was.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I take it for granted because I know everybody, with the exception of a couple of new folks. So I never think that you guys haven't been introduced, but actually, we've only got 30 or so minutes. While I'm fiddling around with insects, I'll leave them on the screen. I wonder if there's a way for me to get two screens. Actually, probably not. No, rather than do that now. Let me not blindside people with a sudden request to make an introduction. Next time we get together, the next couple of Pzooms, the morning one and the afternoon one, I'm going to ask you guys to just introduce yourselves as macro photographers and say where you are in your journey, what you enjoy doing, what you're working on, what your equipment is, and just stuff that you'd be interested in hearing about Graham. In fact, Graham, why don't you just tell us about your practice and what you're doing, where you're going, and what excites you about this, to give folks an idea of the kind of information that you'd like to hear for when we do this next time.
Sure. Okay. Really briefly. Yeah, I'm old, still working, so I haven't got a great deal of time. Working at school as a production manager, and my interest is in technology generally. I'm used to making custom parts and things like that, and my feeling about where I'm going is that there's no point, rather like with 3D printing, I don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of everything I do because there's just not enough time. But if I want to go forward, I'll take what other people have done, like Allan, use that information, and rather than going over the same ground again, even though it might be a really interesting and good fun, to try and just develop new things. So as we probably all know, I'm experimenting with non-flash photography. Behind me, there's 20 flash guns sitting on a shelf behind me, I don't use flash guns anymore. It's just great fun experimenting and doing something different. So that's me.
While you're on the subject, could you give us a brief update on the platform, the progress with non-flash?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm tending to favour the horizontal rig. I hardly ever use the vertical one. I will do it sometime. The horizontal one is fantastic. It's working really well. Allan was talking about using high-speed flash. If you get your equipment, I've said this before, but if you get your equipment, turn down the flash speed down to 128 and get enough of them around to light the subject, you can do fast flash photography just with a stack shot. It works really well. Using constant light, you've got to be more stable, which is the route I've gone. The real problem is getting the enough light to the subject in order to do it fast. The modern cameras, you can use available light. You can take a picture over 1 second. As long as you don't get any movement, you can take a picture of a second or 2 seconds or something like that, and it will be really good. The difficult thing is to get artificial light in such an intensity and diffused, and not waste any in order to make it work faster.
Right, and to do that, you've redesigned the whole concept of the rail, and where's that going now? I mean, what have you done as far as the linkages and the parts that were weak spots?
There aren't any weak spots. It's brilliant. Ask a stupid question. No, all joking apart, the linear rails are absolutely, they don't move. It's absolutely perfect. So you can just, it's a flat platform. In my case, it's about, I don't know, about a foot wide and 15 inches long. And it's literally a flat platform that only goes in one direction without wobbling. So you can screw anything to it, whether it's a camera or a flat, anything you want to, clamp something to it, and it just works. It just takes out one of those variables that most people have. When you buy a stack shot and you stick a camera on top, especially on top of bellows, the camera is 9 inches or or whatever above the level of the stack shot, and as that stack shot moves, it does wobble. Using linear rails, it just takes that away. Now I've done it, I can do exactly the same as I did before. I can use flash or non-flash, and it just works without any movement.
Are you keeping your ISO at minimum?
No, I tend to do ISO 200 now, because I suppose I'm taking pictures of somewhere between a hundredth of a second, or sometimes 1/200th of a second, sometimes as low as a fifth of a second. And I find ISO 200, it halves that speed. It just means I can do it that much quicker. And I just can't be bothered to wait ages for the things to settle down. Why not just take the pictures quickly, get the job done, and move on to something else?
Well, I share your frustrations, and I, for one, have been experimenting with continuous light periodically since you started this project because of your results. Mine hasn't been as good as yours, but I don't think I have an inherently unstable platform, even at this new place. I'm working on a different solution, but I think that is been a primary reason for trying out different things. And I tried out something different this week. I want to get your opinion on. And this goes for anybody who's doing any macro at all. I had to produce a photograph that was going to take a total of 6,000 to 7,000 individual frames. So time was of the essence. I decided to try the focus shift shooting with my Nikon D850, and almost immediately fell in love with it, having figured out what I'd been doing wrong in the past. Have you ever experimented with that, Graham, with the focus shift shooting, whatever your in-camera focus bracketing is?
No, I think everyone will identify with this. Macro photography isn't just one thing. I have spent a lot of my time in the past taking pictures of what I call macro, which is sort of 1-to-1, or using the MP65 outside, taking pictures of insects on the roofs of the sheds and things like that.
Sure.
Making my own diffusers for flash and getting some fantastic results. I find that a fundamentally different type of macro photography than what we're doing with stack shots and things like that. So I tend to regard the in-house or the in-camera focus stacking as something what I would call bigger macro, something that I would do outside. I would, because they lay on the ground and take pictures of dragonflies or whatever it might be. But that is a fundamentally different part of photography. I do that. I have done an awful lot of it. And I really enjoy it, but this is a different kind. So I think rather like photography is such a massive genre of different bits and pieces, macro photography is exactly like that as well. If you're happy at 1-to-1, then that's fundamentally different from 5-to-1 or 10-to-1. And I just haven't got time to do everything. I don't know if anyone else.
No, I agree with you. And I was actually shooting at 1-to-1. The only reason I needed 7,000 pictures was I was taking them from different angles, and it was just a chore, and processing them is a chore. But I did not realize how quick and smooth the process of setting that focus shift up and just letting it fly. I'm still using flash. My MF12s will flash at a rate of every 2 seconds for about 1,000 flashes at half power before, or 8 power, sorry, before one of them drops a shot. I shot 7,000 frames with one black frame. So the flash wasn't an issue, but yeah, it's new to me, but I'm excited about it. What I didn't understand was the numeric scale in the Nikon cameras. Anyway, you set your step length in an increment of 1 to 10, but it doesn't tell you what a 1 or a 10 is. And for the longest time, I could not figure out what they were going on about. I mean, if you're photographing a ladybird, then that must be a 1, and if you're photographing a landscape, that's a 10. But it's actually not that at all. It's always a 5, unless you've got a reason to make the steps shorter or longer, because of course the camera knows what lens you're using because it's changing the focus for you. So that once I figured that out, that this is just a proportional setting, all of a sudden it made this into a really valuable tool if you had to, fly through a whole bunch of photographs. Anybody else using focus shift shooting or in-camera bracketing for that matter? I'm going to take me off my wasp off for just a second. And then,
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
I do quite a bit of that. In Arizona here, we have beautiful cactus flowers, and I've used that. And Allan, it works. I agree with your analysis on the numbers. It doesn't make any sense. And you do a Google on it, and I haven't found anybody that can answer where their logarithm, where their formulas came from.
Well,
hey, Allan.
Yes.
This is Bud. It seemed like to me I took pictures of a ruler using the in camera, and if you're focused close and you say like on a 4, the depth of field it sees the camera is focused in close, and it makes the appropriate changes. And then if you're focused at 10 feet, then all of a sudden it's not the same depth of field. It changes again. So it squeezes like an accordion depending on how close or far away you are. I tend to use 4 on my Nikons. And if I have to go to a 3, I do it. I've rarely gone to a 5, but the last one I shot of a flower was a 5. and I've never gone higher than that.
That is a good way of describing exactly what I was saying. It knows the lens you have on because it's communicating with it. It knows the depth of field because it's got the picture, and then it's just a matter of setting what it believes the right increment is. So all we have to do is change it up or down from that middle spot if our steps are appearing to be too short or too long. And then it becomes much more of an automatic process. And for most situations, you're going to put it on a setting and just leave it there unless you're changing things. But as far as your depth of field isn't going to change with that lens setup. But yeah, that sums it up nicely. But I've been using 6, and my pictures haven't had any focus banding, and that has reduced by 1,000 the number I needed. So that's pretty good. Was my wasp visible at any point during oh, tell me it was. Oh, that's terrible. I had my wasp on screen. I thought I was demonstrating how I clean a wasp while Graham and I were talking. Let me see if I'll try that one more time. You see a wasp now? No. I wonder what happened. No, it's just my face, isn't it? That's terrible. It might have been OBS turned off my virtual camera. Well, that's too bad. Let me try sharing a screen and putting this up on the screen, because I just cleaned this wasp, and I'll show you how I do it. It only took a minute. Let me move it up to the top. See, if you knew what I was thinking, you could have said, no, it's not there, Allan. But I didn't tell you that's what I was doing. So there you go. Sorry about that. Let's try this instead then. Just when you think you're getting good at, whoa, it's not going to share that camera at all, apparently. One more thing to try. Oh, you know what? I bet I had the wrong camera on. I did. Let's try that. Now do you see a wasp? No, you don't. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's a big wasp that I have no idea what kind of a wasp it is. It looks like a hunting wasp. We'd call it in Alabama, but this is a Canadian wasp. It drinks a completely different kind of beer to American wasps. It's beautiful. In fact, I put a stereo of this wasp on the in the post I put out this morning. This is that guy, if you saw him. The way I cleaned him is he was in alcohol on this pin, and I just went through the whole process of laying him down on one of my little yoga mats on his back. He'll stick to this. It's a piece of filter paper. And then I take filter paper crescents like this and work my way around the entire insect, starting with the antennae, because they're going to dry first, and use the tip of the paper to reposition the antenna where I want it and dry it at the same time. Then I'll work my way around the eyes to the mouth parts. And all I'm doing is putting the points in and letting it soak the moisture out. When you get to the back that's hairy, you just dry it in tiny stroke motions like that, and it'll stand the hair up on its end very smoothly. And you do the same with the extremities, the appendages, just one at a time. Lift them up by the claw and stretch them out, and the liquid comes out and they dry in that position. And you just go around patiently, one at a time, until they're all in the positions you want them in. The forelimbs on wasps are in their flying position, and they don't come out from there. You can break them and make them go straight, but that's the way they fly, with those two front hands clasped. They're not hands either. They're just claws. Wings. Probably the most useful part of this is you take it's hard, Gary. It's upside down and backwards. There we go. And then I'm in the way. Take your paper and slide it underneath the wings one at a time. Like, I can't see if it's under, like that. And all the way to the top of the wing. Sorry, I've got to look at this. It's easier under the microscope, like that. And just, it was going well under the scope, believe me. If you just rest it underneath the wing, it'll soak all of the liquid. Shoot, I'm gonna start swearing in a minute. It'll start soaking all of the liquid out from the root of the wing. It'll dry the wing flat and shiny. And then when you pull this out, it'll leave it sitting up off the abdomen. This is just wasps. Bees are different, flies are different, but the same technique. Stingers, you can actually tease the stinger out with the tip of the paper. Not if it's not on the screen though. No. I'd need loops to see it from there. That's all it is. One piece of paper, and this wasp is ready to shoot now. I had cleaned it in soap and water earlier, 3 days earlier, and it's been in alcohol since. So this is an interim cleaning. One piece of paper, 5 minutes. And yeah, how do you guys do it? Bud, how do you clean a wasp that's already had one go around? What do you do differently?
Mine's probably on the pin as well, and basically once it's on the pin, I take it out and do pretty much like you do with the thing. It's already clean, so it's basically drying the hairs. And what I use is an aquarium air pump, and I've nozzled it down so that I can dry parts of the wasp with the air pump, getting closer and further back. And
I did that. I built a weevil drying wind tunnel at one point so that I could rapidly dry weevils so that their colors would show up. But it seemed to dry them too quick for regular insects. Do you not find you run out of that window of time where things are a bit stickier? They don't dry too quickly?
I haven't so far, so it's probably in my future, I'm sure. But I told you the other day about, what I did with beetles and such to bring the color back, because I always look at my insects while they're in alcohol. I like to see what color they are while they're totally wet and floating. And this very fine oil called Kroil, Kroil. The oil, if you use any kind of oil, it glumps up, but this stuff does not. You paint it really thin on a piece of metal until your brush is nearly dry, and you can go back and pick up just enough to paint the shell or some part, and the hairs tend to stay apart. So far, I have a carpenter bee that I'm getting ready to experiment, so I'll let you know what happens. But that's pretty much what I've done. And if I don't have one on the pin, I use a very fine mesh, and I get the bug floating in the alcohol on its back. I get the mesh under the bug. I sort of tease the wings out a little bit while it's wet. And when I lift it out with the mesh, the wings stay, glued to the micron mesh stuff. And I'm able to maneuver the legs and stuff that way. And then I start working the paper from the back of the mesh to dry the wings.
Has anybody else heard of or used this liquid Kroil? Oh, Gary, you've heard of it. What do you use it for?
I use it as a lubricant. It's a very fine lubricant for about anything mechanical.
You use it as a penetrating oil?
Yeah, it's very good at that. But it lasts longer than WD-40. It has more oil to it than the other.
Yeah, I was introduced to it a couple of years ago by Bud, and I keep forgetting to buy some. It's not something you add to your shopping list. Buy Croyle, and then I forget the name of it. But yeah, apparently it's Bud, describe what you did with the beetle, and let me see if I can find the beetle to show people.
Well, what I did is the beetle, as it dried, it lost all of its iridescence, and it was a bug that Allan was kind enough to share with me. And you know, I took 3 different exposures of it, but I was very unhappy that it lost its color. And so I thought I had this real fine penetrating oil, but I knew it would take a minimal amount, and I got the least amount possible on a brush, and I was able to bring that color back beautifully. I was able to, because it wasn't like a drop, it was just, you could paint the back of this bug and all of its iridescence came back, and I photographed it and sent it to Allan.
And I'm getting ready to put it up for some reason. My screen's not sharing, but is it showing there by any chance?
That's the head. You show the one of the whole body, you get the appearance of what it might.
I'll have to find that one, but this you guys may remember seeing my version of this. It was nowhere near as true to the iridescent nature of the thing's skin. Let me see if I can find it. You know what? I didn't think to get this. Yeah. Go ahead.
He was saying put the picture up with the whole body in it.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just I'm slow.
But it was a major difference because I compared it to the one Allan had done it similarly, and it looked like a different bug.
Yeah, it did to me too. Is this the one you're talking about, Bud?
I don't see a picture yet.
There may be a slight lag.
I don't see a picture yet.
Oh, well, that should, oh gosh, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here now.
That one will work. That one will work if you can blow that one up. That, you know, you see how the back is red and green and the back of the head? That was all dull and almost had no color in it. And I painted it with oil, and then I photographed it. I put it on the yellow on the back.
Let me try to find mine, because it's not going to make any sense to compare them without seeing the other one, is it really? Did I send it to you, Bud? Did I send you? Yes, I did. I sent you my original studio picture. So let me see if I can find it in the text. Here it is.
Yeah. My phone's less than 10%, so I may die here in a second.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't know if this is showing up, but if it is, on the right is my original photograph of this thing, and a more recent one as soon as it opens. Sorry about this. Here it is. Okay. So do you see that by any chance? That is the original bug the way I saw it. I'm guessing you don't see that.
Yeah, we can see it.
You know, guys, I just discovered what it is. My network has gone down. It's the storm.
We can see you and hear you.
Can you see anything on the screen?
Yeah, bug said, dullish colors.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. This is what it originally looked like. I think that the storm may have washed away some important piece of equipment outside. Yeah.
No, you're coming loud and clear through here in England.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good then. Let me. That is the way I saw it. So when I saw Bud's picture, I didn't know how he could get this on there. I pulled the picture out and looked at it, and what in my mind had been a hairy bug was only hairy underneath. His back actually should be more shiny. So I think that the picture that Bud got of this was a lot more true to life. Of course, neither of us saw the thing alive. It had probably been dead for a year when I got it.
No, you
So
wouldn't think it was the same insect.
no, you wouldn't, but it definitely is. It's a flower scarab, by the way, is what it is.
Yeah. I look at all these bugs under the alcohol because I want to see them wet, as I mentioned. And this bug was just like a showstopper, colorful bug. And I got him dry and on the pen, and it's like, what happened? And that's when I started looking for a solution.
Well, I did order Croyle, by the way, finally today, this morning. So there'll probably be a video on that after the 27-hour build your own 3D printer video, which is going to be a showstopper, I'm sure. Tell me, can you see through my microscope now? No.
Yes.
You can?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Oh, blimey. Well, I'm tell you what, I'm gonna re-clean this insect while we chit chat and say goodbye, because we're about out of time, and I don't want to start a new topic at this point. We'll open the floor up for comments.
My phone's dying, Alan. I'm gonna have to bid you adieu.
Okay,
Enjoy.
Bud, thanks for coming. Thanks for everything you did, and do appreciate it. I'll talk to you in a day or two. Anybody who needs to go, just feel free to go. I'm going to just clean this wasp again where he can actually be seen, I hope. There we go. That's more like it. I know it's not in focus, but I'm getting...
Allan, this is Walter. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Before you go, on Thursday, you made a very generous offer to send some of your diffusing material to anyone who would like some.
Yes.
And I would like some.
Okay, done. Yeah, this isn't like trying to send the liquid that turned out to be so darned expensive to bottle up and box and everything. I can just cut this off this enormous sheet that I've got. Please, in the chat, put your name and address, including your zip code, and say diffuser material. And
Great.
I will mail it
Thank
to
you.
you.
I will, of course, reimburse you.
No.
I will reimburse you for the.
I bought this at a thrift shop for about, I think, $2, and it's a 5-pound roll of it, so it'll last me 100 years. I'm happy to share it with you guys. So if you want some, just put your name and address in the chat, and say diffuser, and I'll go cut it now, put it in envelopes and stick it down in the mail. Oh no, the mailbox is blown away. I'll take it to the post office. All right. So
Thank you.
You bet, my pleasure. What I was saying was I just used the tip of a folded piece of a medium action filter paper to do everything with these bugs on a re-clean, whether that's to comb the fuzzy hair on their back. Let's see if I can turn down the whatchamacallit there. It's a bit too bright. There we go. Get a bit more depth of field. Yeah, that's better. So I start up at the top with the things that are going to dry first, which is the antennae. And I simply, you know what? I'm going to wet this guy so you can see how that works. I'm just dipping him in booze over here on the side. This is how he's normally going to look. Of course, everything's completely flat. When you first take them out, everything's lying down flat. And the trick is to use the point of filter paper to hold things up away from the body in position and let the alcohol absorb. And it's, see how that antenna went from laying down to sticking out in a perfect position just by holding it. And you work your way around the bug like that. Of course, it's a bit easier when you're looking through the scope rather than looking at the television, because the television's flat. Yeah, same thing with the other antenna. And then the last things you do are go back and clean the compound eyes. There's no advantage to getting to them right away. There is an advantage to doing the wings quickly. So while the thing is still wet, I will get it back in focus. Yeah, the light's not very good, is it? It's a little hard to see. I still don't have the right adapter for the microscope after all of that time and trouble and expense from you folks. I'm still missing a lensed adapter to connect the two so that they can be parfocal. Anyway, I'm holding the wing. Let me do that again where you can see it. I'm holding the wing up in the air and then resting the paper against the back, and you can see all of that moisture. Can you see it wicking out of the wing? And not only is it drying the wing and the abdomen, but when you're through, if you slide the paper over and hold the wing up, it will hold in that position in a slightly more natural living pose. And then I do the same with the other wing. This is, see how that sits up there now? It's beautiful. And yeah, and all you need is a piece of filter paper. I can usually do a bumblebee with just one of these. By the time you've finished using one end of the paper, the other end is dried and you can turn it around and use it again. The biggest collections of fluids are between the abdominal segment and the thoracic segment under here, and also between the head and the thorax. So if you can get a point in there and just leave it, it will soak everything up from all around in there. Because otherwise, if you don't do this, what will happen is, see the fluid, now you probably can't from that angle, but the paper is just filling up. If you don't do this, then when you clean the mouth parts, say, as soon as you get through, more liquid's going to flow from that space underneath the back of the head. This is a very dynamic, active way of drying and cleaning an insect. These points will pick granules of dirt and muck off the insect more actively than washing it in soap and water will at this stage. And I can't find where my Pzoom thing is anymore. So oh, there it is. You guys have wandered over to screen number 4.5. So that's all there is to it. And I love Bud's idea of doing that more. And I've got this set up where at the drop of a hat, just tell me what you want me to do. If I didn't have that secret piece of equipment over there, I could take you over there too. I've even got my phone to be my other camera. Let me show you. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll do it next time, but I can just hook it up so I can go over there and keep talking. It's brilliant. All right, guys, parting comments. The floor is yours. Any feedback on what we need to do at these meetings, or do you think this is interesting? You want to see a list of them over on Patreon and think about it and leave a comment there?
Yeah, do a list. Actually,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I will do a list today. I'll send it over, and it's more like a poll. Just give me the numbers of the things you like, or Born. Are you still in the hospital?
Indeed, I am.
Oh, for crying out loud. That's above and beyond. signing
Yeah.
in from.
I managed to escape for 40 hours the other day, but
Oh,
let me have it. Want to be back again as soon as they dock my blood results. But
well, I am so sorry to hear that you're back in there. Well, I wondered why you were horizontal. I mean, it's none of my business.
with me cannula and
Yeah.
with me cannula and everything.
Yeah. Well, geez, it's you got more well wishers on Thursday than you
Yeah,
can
I know
take a
that.
stick at. Everybody was asking after you, and
Yeah, that was amazing.
yeah, it's a good group we have here.
Yeah,
Good
great
group indeed.
community. Great community here.
Yeah, I love it. That's for sure. Okay, well, let me see. What else have I got to say or do? I think I've covered everything. I promise next time, well, as soon as I get permission, I'm going to give you all the skinny on this amazing new thing. Yeah. Don't buy any.
Just to see it.
Huh?
We're anxious to see it.
Yeah. It'll blow you away. I should accidentally put a picture up, but somehow it will get back to them. I've been trying to get this company to talk to me for 4 years. So now as they are, I think I'll probably best behave for a while anyway. All right, guys, have a great week. Hope you can make it on Tuesday or Thursday or both. And yeah, we'll keep working to make this thing better. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's going well. Videos coming out are all on equipment, but beginner-oriented equipment. I've got a couple of reviews and a wee macro thing. I'm going to film one of them right now. So, okay, that'll be out soon. You guys have a good week, and you know how to
Cheers
reach
for all
me.
you do for us.
Get well
Thank you.
soon, Bacon Meister.
Cheers.
Yes.
All right. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Alan.
You bet. My pleasure.
Oh.
And thanks again to Josh for coming. That was great.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All righty. The end meeting for all thing has completely vanished. So we're just going to keep this thing going forever.
Yeah, just keep it going. Then.
I did one time. It makes for a very long, boring video, though. Looks like Prusa is in my future.
Sounds like it's in mine too.
Oh, were you getting one?
I'm thinking about it.
Well, let's get them at the same time so that you can try to build it first and tell me what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, I see. I see what it is. I had it on screen share. I fixed it. Oh, I need to read all these messages. Okay, well, yeah, I'll read them and respond in the Patreon thing. So you guys take care. Bacon Meister, get well soon.
Hey, cheers.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Alan.
Later.
Cheers.